So you're probably wondering, why Assassin's Creed 3? It's not exactly the most remembered game of the series. Like, everybody loves the second one, respects the first one, thinks Black Flag is the best, so why 3? Well, I have no other reason than that it was the first one that I played. I honestly can't say whether Assassin's Creed 3 or Far Cry 3 was the first Ubisoft game I played, but I feel like the first time you play one of their games is kind of a magical experience. Like, the scale of Ubisoft games is just massive, and while in 2026 we've all kind of gotten tired of it, like we don't want to have a giant map covered in the same 3 activities, it's pretty cool when you're like 11 years old. Anyway, if you want to play Assassin's Creed 3 in 2026, good luck, buddy. The only obvious option is to buy the remaster, which costs 40 bucks, and people say they added a bunch of stupid mechanics too, so I didn't want to do that. So you can also just pirate it, of course, but I decided to do it the hard way. So I went on Amazon and purchased myself a disc copy of Assassin's Creed 3 for the PC, which is actually the second PC Assassin's Creed game I own. So my mom got me my first laptop when I was in 6th grade. She got me Assassin's Creed Unity, the disc for it, which was sick, except for the fact that laptop she got me could not run that shit. Like, it was a cheap starter laptop for like homework. There's no way that thing was running a AAA game. I don't follow my mom for that, like why would she know that? And she ended up buying me Minecraft to make up for it, which my laptop could run, so it ended up working out in the end. Anyway, so I ordered a sealed copy off Amazon, from Ubisoft actually. I guess they're still selling those, or they were because Amazon says this was the last one. But you know, it's 2026. Computers don't have disk drives anymore, so of course I had to order myself a shitty little external disk drive as well, which ended up costing me $50 in total, so more than I would have spent on the remaster. But anyway, the game gets here. I popped that shit in the disk drive, and it took like 45 minutes to install. A 17GB game, by the way, which came on 2 separate discs. So I get it installed, I press the launch button, and boom, you need to log into Uplay, buddy. Okay, whatever, I'll just make a new Uplay account so I can play AC3. Except that shit just didn't work for some reason. So whatever, surely my existing Ubisoft account would work on Uplay, right? Oh no, I guess you just can't log into Uplay in 2026. And you also can't start the game in offline mode without logging into Uplay at least once. I actually thought I was cooked here and I'd wasted $50, until just on a limb, I decided to see if it actually worked with Ubisoft Connect, which is like the modern replacement for Uplay, and luckily it did. Even more lucky was that the activation code that came with the game actually worked, so I finally got in, and the game did not recognize my controller. Whatever, that's workable, so I go back to Ubisoft Connect and it says there's an update available for the game. Maybe that'll fix the controller thing. It did not. What it did do though was re-download the entire game faster than the disc did. So now I kind of wonder if I even needed the disc and the disc drive, or if I could have just used the activation code. I don't know, man. Anyway, I got controller support using Steam, so why don't we talk about the actual game? So the last Assassin's Creed game I played before this was Origins, and I never finished it because of a classic Ubisoft game problem. Basically, there was all this shit to do everywhere, like, you know, hunt 50 crocodiles to upgrade your gear or destroy a fort or whatever, and I did so many of those that I got bored like halfway through the main story. What's crazy to me is that Ubisoft has not changed at all in that regard. Like, they've been doing this kind of shit for almost 20 years now. The only thing that's changed is the actual gameplay. Like many people, I definitely had rose-tinted glasses on the old Assassin's Creed gameplay. If you don't know, they initially changed it a little with Syndicate, and then they dropped that system for the one in Origins and all the later ones. Old Assassin's Creed gameplay is very simple. I think it has a lot in common with Batman Arkham, although it's not nearly as polished as those games are. Basically, you have to spam buttons to attack until an enemy attacks you, at which point you press a button to counter. The only mix-up to this formula is what buttons you have to press. So in AC3, for example, there's 3 buttons. You have attack, counter, or guard break. Some enemies, like Grenadiers, will block all of your attacks until you counter one of theirs. Others, like the fast Scottish guys, will slap you anytime you attack them unless you guard break them. And then you have the ultimate challenge, Jaegers, which you have to counter and then guard break. Of course, it does get a little more complicated than that, but generally that's how combat goes in AC3. Unlike the new games, enemies have a very realistic amount of health, meaning that if you bury a hatchet in their shoulder, they're gonna die. It really only takes like 3 normal hits or 1 counter to kill most enemies, and that's really the part of old Assassin's Creed combat that I, and I think everyone, loved. Like, you know, it's not Dark Souls, you're not fighting demons or monsters or whatever, these are just regular blokes. It makes the combat super satisfying because you always feel like you're the best fighter in the room, which you probably should because you're an assassin. There is actually a decent amount of weapon variety in this game, although it's really just a preference thing as they're all really good. Really what it comes down to is which one you think looks the coolest. Like if you just want to use the hidden blade, you absolutely can. It has this really gnarly move where you shove a knife to the top of their head. I think the tomahawk and swords are really interchangeable. Again, which do you think is cooler? The big weapons can be fun to use, but I didn't really like having my boy walk around with a giant axe on his hip, so I didn't use them much. With ranged weapons, it's 1776, so of course those bitches are going to take a year and a half to reload. But what's cool is that you can pick up enemies' muskets and shoot them. Sometimes you'll even find a musket rack and get to shoot like 6 in a row. All in all, the melee combat is really good. Pretty simple and not hard at all, but good. Stealth, on the other hand, I do not remember being like this. I think it's just because the features you see in stealth games have become so standard now that it's surprising when you play a game that doesn't have those. The obvious one is crouching. The only time Connor, which is the main character in this game, will crouch is if he's in tall grass. Otherwise, you just stroll around casually. It's actually way more nerve-wracking than games where you can just crouch. Like, let's say you're trying to sneak up behind a guy to kill him. In other games, you at least know that while you're creeping up behind him, you have a somewhat low profile so other enemies won't see you. Not Connor though, he walks up behind enemies with his head held high. In general, I think it's kind of hard to be super stealthy in this game. Like, if you do want to play stealth, the best way to do it is just to shoot arrows at everyone from a high perch rather than actually sneaking around. The detection in AC3 is super forgiving and there's not really like an alarm system. Like, if you get spotted by an enemy but then escape, they'll just be like, well, whatever it was, it's gone now, and the fort will just go back to normal. Again, this is just something that every stealth game today has, so it's shocking to go back to a time when one of the biggest stealth franchises didn't have that. The weird thing is, that really only applies to forts. If you get into trouble in the streets, reinforcements will show up. I think that makes sense. Like, if you saw some bloke in a hoodie kill 10 cops in a row, you'd probably run away, and then if you saw 10 more cops down the street, you'd go to them and be like, hey, some bloke in a hoodie just killed 10 cops down there. So when it comes to the enemies, there's not really that many, but that's also realistic. Honestly, it's even a little unrealistic how many enemy types there are. Like, there cannot be that many big Scottish guys in kilts running around for the British Army to recruit. I don't know, maybe there are. If you're from the UK, let me know. But yeah, you have the basic redcoat / patriot, just a guy with a musket. No big deal, although they will form firing lines on you sometimes. The grenadier will sometimes throw bombs down, but mostly they just like roll over your back then try to attack you. The Scottish guys are called brutes, and I remember when I was a kid playing this game that they had this really stupid sounding voice line. I don't know, hopefully I can find it on YouTube, but I never heard them say it in this playthrough, which was super disappointing. I couldn't find it, and I'm not going to try to quote it because now I'm paranoid that it didn't actually exist and me and my brother collectively hallucinated this dumbass voice line from the game. But I guess it played when they swung their axe and like, dude, I don't know. Hopefully somebody knows what the fuck I'm talking about. I swear it existed. And then you have captains, who are just kind of like a better redcoat. They'll parry you until you guard break them, at which point they die easy. And then you have the Jaegers, which I already mentioned. They do look really cool though. The Patriots have their own equivalent to each of these, although they're nowhere near as cool looking. The Patriots in this game are interesting because by the end of it, Connor should be like a living legend to these guys. I mean, you kind of fall out towards the end, but even then, every single Patriot leader knows and respects Connor, so you think that the general Patriot soldiers would have at least heard that if they see a native guy with a hood on, that it might be the guy who basically won them this war. You even like literally command the Patriot army at a certain point. But that's not how it is. They act exactly like the Redcoats, which is to say they attempt to blow your shit smooth off if you cross them in any way, shape, or form. What used to happen to me as a kid a lot was I would clear a fort, which replaces the Redcoats inside with Patriots, then accidentally bump into one or something and then have to kill all of the Patriots I just captured the fort for because they all turn hostile on me. It's kind of like, fuck you guys. I don't know though, maybe it's intentional. Maybe Ubisoft was commenting on the actual relationship between the Native Americans and the colonists at this time, or basically any point in our history. There's also a bunch of animals you can kill, like, you know, bunnies, raccoons, beavers, which always made me really sad as a kid because I thought they were super cute. Deer, elk, mountain lions, and bears. Bunnies, racks, deers, and beavers are all pretty easy, you just need to get a drop on them, but the carnivores and the elk will actually go out of their way to attack you and lock you into a QTE. It's really not that hard, it actually gets kind of annoying because it's like, if you would have just left me alone, bear, I wouldn't have had to kill you. You can then sell the animal parts for a pretty modest price or use some of them to upgrade your homestead. This is a part of the game that I never really cared about, not when I was a kid and still not now. I don't know, man. You can like launch caravans to earn money or something. It's just like upgrading the estate in Assassin's Creed 2, in the sense that the second the tutorial for it was over, I was like, fuck that. Some of the homestead missions are kind of fun though. You get to gather this little group of people who can provide some kind of good or service to you. Like there's these two lumberjacks you can find, one of which looks exactly like that German guy from Hoodwinked. And they're just in general fun characters. The lumberjacks are far and away the best, but the others are alright too. These aren't really homesteaders, but I'm a big fan of the ship captain and old Pegleg as well. Speaking of, you can also upgrade your ship and run ship missions. Now, if you're an Assassin's Creed fan, I would bet that you probably associate this kind of ship combat with Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, a game many consider to be the best in the series. Well, what if I told you that I don't have that association? In fact, I've never played Black Flag, because I actually played Rogue instead, which is the other ship game in the series. I played the fuck out of Rogue. Honestly, I have fonder memories of that game than I do of AC3. By the time I was done, I really had no desire to play any more ship games, which is why I still haven't played Black Flag to this day. Rogue is one of those games in the series, like Brotherhood, where people either just don't know it exists or just don't talk about it. I wish they would. Rogue was good. Honestly, couldn't tell you a single thing about Brotherhood though. You actually play as a Templar in Rogue, which is kind of cool. I think maybe they were trying to emulate the coolness of Haytham from this game by doing that, which Haytham is fucking sick. Anyway, off topic. Ship combat, it's alright. They definitely improved it a lot in Black Flag and Rogue, but it's okay in this game. The best part about it is that you don't have to do it very often. Now there are a bunch of little side missions you can do if you want. You can even give this crackhead named Pegleg enough random shit so he tells you where Captain Kidd's treasure is, but in general it's just okay. For the main missions, most of them are fine, but there are a couple segment types that I just hated so bad. The big one are chases. Fuck me, man, I hate the chases so much. They're just so boring and scripted, especially when you need to take someone in alive. If you don't need to take them in alive, you can just whip out the pole and shoot them in the back, but when you do need to actually catch them, it just gets so damn annoying. These are like pretty frequent too. It's not like every mission is a chase, but whenever one comes up, you get reminded real quick how much they suck. The other type that sucks ass are the eavesdropping sections. Oh boy, let me slowly follow a group of enemies around while I listen to their dialogue. It's just like one of the most fun things I've ever been a part of. You know what? I'll say it. I have the courage to say this. I think this game would be better if each mission was just a 5-minute eavesdropping section followed by a chase scene. Or, you know, actually, I wish it was a follow an NPC across town, then eavesdrop, then chase. I will say this though, following an NPC who's slightly slower than you isn't super common in this game. However, its frequency is doubled by the fact that in AC3 you also have NPC who's slightly slower than you following you around. Fuck yeah, let's go, man. Obviously, not every mission has one of these sections. Some of them are really good, like when you get to command the troops or just anytime you get to fight someone. Like, I didn't not have fun while I was playing this game. It's just like, okay buddy, do we really need the final mission as Connor to be the longest chase scene yet? This game on PC is also insanely buggy. Now, to be fair, I don't know if it was always like this or if it's just because I'm running it on modern hardware, but this shit both ran horribly and was buggy as hell. So first of all, performance. So I have this gaming laptop, right? I know, L. But it has a 13980 and a 4090 in it. Pretty good, right? Especially for a game from 2012. Anyway, I would think that with this system, I'd basically have unlimited performance. Like, I'd have thought I could probably run this shit at 8K resolution. How wrong I was. Now, to be fair, I almost always stayed above 60 FPS at 1440, but like, the most I'd ever get consistently was like 90. 90 FPS on a game from 2012, bro. What the hell? And it's not like there's a frame rate limit like some games have, like Elden Ring, for example, can only go up to 60. No, I saw it hit 240 occasionally. I just literally couldn't do more than 90 FPS consistently. And even then, I'd frequently drop below that. Now, as for the bugs, far and away the most common happened anytime there was a carriage on screen. They would just constantly flicker in and out of existence, and every single carriage in the game did that. It really caused problems when I either had to drive a carriage, like this part early on where you have to take these prisoners into a fort inside of a carriage, and then even worse was when I had to get into the back of a carriage or like climb on one. When I had to do that, I would either get shot up into the sky or fall through the ground. I don't know if this is a bug, but sometimes when I'd be running around New York at 0 notoriety, which means the guards don't care about you, I'd randomly get aggroed by guards and suddenly I'm getting chased around the city by 30 guys. The voice acting in this game is either really solid or really bad, and there's really no in between. Like, most of the main characters sound really good and convincing, but then occasionally you'll just be like, what could they have possibly told that actor in the booth to achieve that kind of performance? The worst example of this are all the Native American characters besides Connor and his mom, and even then they're a little iffy. Now I'll admit, I'm not exactly the expert in how the Mohawk language should sound, but I don't think it sounds like this. Like, I get that it's probably not very easy to find people that both speak the language and are willing to hop in the booth, but like, they could have tried a little harder to make it sound like they actually know what the fuck they're saying. I used to work at a rec center, and we have a ton of people come in who spoke Spanish. And my friend used to whip out ChatGPT and have it translate for him, which was already funny enough. But then instead of like having ChatGPT read it out, he would read out the Spanish himself in the worst accent ever. He'd be standing there trying to explain to someone when the pool closes in Spanish, and I'm fighting for my life trying not to laugh in the background. Anyway, that's what this sounds like to me. The only exception is Connor, who does sound convincing. The worst is the tribe leader. Holy shit, bro, this woman's voice might be one of the most grating things I've ever heard. Now, let's not discriminate here. Occasionally with the Americans in the story, you'll just meet someone with a modern-day American accent.
Wrong, boy. With him gone, I'll have no choice but to promote Lee, and then... You are both under arrest! Oh, well, we were just having a scrap, officer. Ain't nothing wrong with two men settling their differences the old-fashioned way. Can't we come to a... Quiet! What are the charges? Counterfeiting!
Like, people back then basically still sounded British. What are we doing here? Luckily, it's mostly unimportant side characters, but who's not unimportant is Desmond's dad. Now, I don't think he gives a bad performance necessarily, however, he just talks way too damn fast.
Nearly cost him his life. He was captured and imprisoned.
Those who took him believed he could help them find something. The apple. One of several artifacts we call pieces of Eden. Bits of ancient technology scattered across the globe. Some hidden, some found. All of them dangerous. Most are held by a single group. The same group that now held Desmond. You know them as external space. We know them as the Templars. As the enemy. We've been fighting them for thousands of years. Even longer if you believe the stories of their origins. I do. After all, I've seen the truth.
Like, I'm a pretty fast talker myself, and even then, I'm like, slow down, bro. On the other hand, Achilles, Hatham, Charles Lee, Putnam, that one hooligan guy, and most of the other main characters are really well done. Even some of the less important characters like the French chef are really well acted and they really get you into the story. Connor himself is kind of a mixed bag. Sometimes you're like, fuck yeah, Connor, get him. And other times you're like, what are you talking about, bro? In general though, that's kind of just Connor's character. He's kind of a frustrating protagonist, I think, because he is a really cool character, but he's also like very gullible and naive and kind of stupid. We'll talk more about him later. Anyway, Assassin's Creed games, especially the older ones, live and die by the setting, the story, and the characters. And in this instance, it's also kind of a mixed bag. Like, I'd say 80% of this game's story and characters are good, but then like 20% sucks. Let's get into it. First of all, Desmond. So if you've never played the older Assassin's Creed games, they weren't just historical fiction. No, you were actually playing as a modern guy named Desmond Miles, who was forced to relive his ancestors' memories to locate artifacts of an ancient, hyper-advanced civilization. I feel like this is one part of old Assassin's Creed that hasn't been hit with revisionism. Everybody agrees that the Desmond parts were stupid. Like when I was a kid playing AC2 and 3, every time I got pulled out of the historical story to play as bitch-ass Desmond Miles, I was so mad. Now though, I'm kinda like, what were they smoking in Canada to come up with the storyline? First of all, why do we need an explanation for historical fiction? It almost feels like History Channel to me, like, you know, Ancient Aliens type things. Like, you know, what if every powerful person throughout history belonged to the same secret order, and they wanted to use ancient alien technology to mind control the entire world? Like, okay man, but again I ask, why do we need Desmond for that? It's like, I don't know, Ubisoft was insecure or something. Like, they didn't think people would be able to accept historical fiction that used real people in it, unless there was some kind of tether to the real world. I don't know, it's such a weird idea to me, but I think this game in particular, they kind of brought Desmond back. I've never played AC1, but I know in AC2 that man was such a drag on the entire game, In this one though, you do get some really cool modern day sections as Desmond. I think everyone who played AC3 back in the day had the same thought. Like, you know, holy shit bro, this is the future of the series right here. And then it wasn't. We just kept hitting historical games. Which was the right move, but it makes Desmond and the Abstergo thing even weirder. I guess I should explain what I'm talking about if you don't know. So in modern day, there's this evil company called Abstergo who's run by the Templars. This ancient society of powerful people I mentioned. They want to get as many precursor artifacts as possible. Artifacts which allow you to do things like this. They kidnapped Desmond Miles, who's just like a normal dude, because he's the descendant of a bunch of ancient assassins who often became the protectors of these artifacts. They force him into a machine called the Animus, which can reconstruct your ancestors' memories through your DNA. Which is insane, and they force him to use it to find these artifacts. This is a stupid tangent, but I hate how people talk about ancestry. Brother, do you know how many ancestors you have? Let's think about this. If I have a kid with someone, that kid has double the amount of ancestors that I have, then if they have kids, their kids have 4 times, and then their kids have 8 times, and so on and so on. Obviously, it doesn't quite add up just like that, because all of us are probably distantly related in some way, but like, you have so many fucking ancestors that claiming anything from anyone who isn't within like the past 3 or 4 generations of you is stupid, I think. It's like the whole Genghis Khan thing, or for white people like me, people will be like, holy shit, I'm related to King Willie III, as if like everyone whose family comes from England or Scotland isn't also in some way related to Willie III. It's just stupid. Like in this story, they probably could have picked anybody off the street and found out that they had an assassin ancestor. Tangent over. By the time of AC3, Desmond has escaped Abstergo and is now working on his own with his friends to stop the end of the world. There's going to be this massive solar flare that literally destroys the entire planet, and the only way to stop it is to find out how the precursors handled it. Where Connor comes in is that he was the last ancestor known to have come in contact with the key to the temple. So Desmond has to go back to America right in the middle of the Revolutionary War to find out what he did with it. So first of all, I think that colonial America is such an underutilized setting in fiction. Like, I get that it's not as cool as the Wild West and all that, but it easily could be. I think most media set in this time period tries to be super, like, historical. Like, we can only tell stories that actually happened in this period. The only exception being stories about the Salem witch trials. But then you look at the aforementioned Wild West and it's like, the Wild West didn't even exist. Like, movies and books literally created a perception of the West that was not real. But when it comes to the colonial times, oh no, we have to be as realistic as possible. That's one of the reasons why I have such an attachment to this game. Like, it's the only game set in this time period that isn't just like a battle simulator or something. Anyway, you don't start as Connor, you start as his dad, Haytham Kenway, who, I didn't actually know this, is the son of Edward from Black Flag. See, I would know this if I actually played that game, but anyway, upon first impression, he very clearly seems to be an assassin. He has the hidden blade and everything. But he is not. He's a Templar, a very high-ranking one, actually. And the beginning of the game has you gathering up some Templar allies to try to get into some precursor ruins. Really cool. It's a great subversion, and almost all the characters from this first section are also really fun. Charles Lee being the most obvious example. He's like a golden retriever or something in this opening.
Master Kenway! Master Kenway!
Yes, may I help you?
Charles Lee, sir. Pleasure to make your acquaintance. I've been asked to introduce you to the city, help you settle in. Oh, no need, sir. I've arranged for your bags to be delivered to the inn.
Like, he's so eager to please Haytham in any way he can, so that he can become a Templar too. It's like, aw, watch Charles go. And then he switches up insanely in Connor's section.
I could snap your neck, you know. A little more pressure, and pop. The sad little flame of your life extinguished.
But whatever. The other guys are cool too. Thomas Hickey is definitely the standout. It's like everyone else is so professional and kind of haughty, and he's like a roadman or whatever.
Who's asking?
Haytham Kenway.
Is that supposed to mean something?
Show some respect, boy.
Peace, Charles. William Johnson sent us in the hopes we might expedite your search.
Don't need no expediting. Don't need none of your fancy London speak neither. I found the men that done the theft.
John Pitcairn and William Johnson are just kind of there though, at least in this early section. The Haytham sections are interesting because they really do kind of sell you on the idea that the Templars aren't actually so bad. Haytham in general does this just by being really charismatic and actually believing in everything that he says. You kind of end up rooting for him to find what he's looking for, even though that's the complete opposite of what you should be doing. My favorite Haytham section is when he's on the ship, because you see him actively losing his patience and the veneer he puts on of being this fancy upper-class British guy, as these sailors just continuously mess with him. Anyway, when Haytham does not find what he wants, the game switches to his son Connor, his son with the leader of the Mohawk tribe. No, not the annoying old lady. Connor's mom is actually cool. Anyway, the first couple Connor chapters are such an insane slog when coming directly off Hatham's chapters. I get why these were needed, but it's kind of a puzzling decision to give the player like 2 hours of sick-ass Assassin's Creed gameplay, then pull them out of it to play hide-and-seek as a little kid. This is also when you meet Charles Lee again. Keep in mind this is like maybe 20 minutes after you last saw him as Hatham.
You are nothing, a speck of dust. You and all your ilk, living in the dirt like animals. Beg mercy.
This golden retriever of a guy, even though he kind of looked evil from the start, when Connor meets him he's like comically evil, even like being super racist to Connor when like 10 years ago he was helping Hatham free native prisoners. I don't think this is inherently a bad change. I think this could have been done really well if like, I don't know, maybe Connor's mom had told him about Hatham and his boys in a positive light, and then when Connor meets him as an adult he's like shocked to find out he's now a terrible person. But that doesn't happen, it's like an immediate switch up from the prologue. Also, Connor's friend from these sections is another bottom tier character from this game. Super annoying. Anyway, the precursors send Connor on a mission to get the amulet. That's when Connor basically harasses Achilles until he agrees to teach Connor to become an assassin. The first few Achilles missions are likewise so slow and boring that it gets really frustrating because you've already had a taste of what the real gameplay of AC3 is like, but now you're forced to do boring menial shit. I think Connor and Achilles' relationship is a little underbaked, despite what I just said. I think we could have benefited from seeing some actual training happen between them. As it is, all that happens off-screen, although to be honest, their relationship never feels that close anyway. You never get the sense that Achilles was anything more than a teacher to Connor. Not a mentor, not a father figure, nothing like that. He's just the guy that taught Connor to kill people. I guess that's fine, but I think it could have been better to see the two of them actually develop some kind of closeness. Anyway, the Boston Massacre mission is cool as fuck, but all the other young Connor missions suck. As I said, the big problem is that you're just now forced to play the tutorial like 2 hours in after you've already played the actual game. So I'm not going to recap the game to you from here, I'm just going to discuss the characters and kind of how they develop throughout the story, talking about the cool missions that come up as we go. So let's go through each of the Templars first. William Johnson ends up being the least interesting. Connor catches him trying to force natives off their land, which at this point he thinks that these blokes were the ones who burned down his village and killed his mother. Connor is given this mission by his bitch-ass friend, who runs all the way to Achilles' house to tell Connor that the Templars are trying to get his people to sell their land. It turns out they're basically being forced to sell, so Connor pulls up and kills Billy Johnson, putting a stop to it. Cool, he was one of the least interesting Templars anyway. After that, you don't really interact with the main Templars for a while. See, the thing about Connor is that for some reason, and I genuinely don't understand this part of his character, he becomes like the staunchest supporter of the American Revolution. He's like, fuck yeah, these Americans want their freedom. I'll help them expel the British from their land. Yeehaw, let's go! Here's the weird thing. The Templars, including Charles Lee, who Connor directly blames for the death of his mother and basically swears an oath of vengeance on, is also a patriot. Connor doesn't seem to care though because he's such a staunch supporter of the revolution, and I genuinely cannot understand why this is. The British have realistically done nothing to him, like he does not have a grudge against them. I don't know why he cares so much about expelling them from the land. Achilles is even like, bro, why do you care so much? It's not your fight. This gets way worse as the story goes on. Connor is literally forced to sit in a room with Charles Lee, well within hidden blade distance, but he does nothing because then it would jeopardize his relationship with the Patriots. This all culminates with Connor finding out that his boy George Washington, who knows and respects Connor as the man who's basically made all of this possible, orders an attack on his tribe. Connor stops the attack, but does not cut off George Washington because of this. No, he only does that when George refuses to imprison Charles Lee after Connor exposes him for trying to undermine George for like the 5th time. It's like, okay, I understand that Ubisoft wanted to give Americans a good old story about our revolution. I honestly don't know anybody who doesn't go, fuck yeah, when we think about that revolution. But Connor is not the right person to give that story to. This should not be his top priority, but because they made him care so much about it, we have to watch him get fucked over time and time again by the Patriots, and just lie down and take it. I could go on, and actually I will go on. Connor gets imprisoned by the Patriots for supposedly trying to assassinate George Washington, where he's then beaten by guards and eventually put up for execution. May I remind you that fucking Connor and George Washington know each other. You'd think that old George, or maybe one of the other like 10 high-ranking Patriot commanders, would speak up and say, maybe we should at least hear Connor out before executing him. But that never happens. And what is Connor's reaction?
Stop.
He wanted to kill the commander. Nearly killed you as well. He was a scoundrel.
But still a man.
You're nothing if not consistent.
Where is Washington? I need to speak with him.
Bundled off as soon as your execution went sideways. He's likely on his way back to Philadelphia by now.
And so am I.
Something wrong?
He is still in danger. Hickey did not act alone.
He doesn't say fuck your war. In fact, he goes on to then help the French Navy win a major battle against the British. The final culmination of all this is Connor finding out that Charles Lee and Hatham didn't even order the attack on his village that killed his mother. No, actually, guess who that was too? This is what I meant when I say Connor is a frustrating character. Like, any reasonable person would either say fuck it and stop helping these bastards or actively switch sides. But Connor doesn't do that. He's all in on the Patriot cause the entire game, even at his own cost. Anyway, John Pitcairn ends up as a British officer who you end up assassinating after a couple really cool sequences. In one, you get to command firing lines while British troops advance on you, then later you have to cross the active firing lines to reach John and kill him. Super sick missions. Thomas Hickey was actually the one behind the whole George Washington assassin scheme, which Connor tries to expose, but again, none of the Patriots give a fuck about this guy who's literally led their armies to victory in the past. So you end up having to escape the gallows with the help of Achilles and stop Thomas literally seconds before he would kill George Washington. Eventually you meet your dad, and this next sequence of missions is easily the best in the game. It really shows you a different side of Connor. Connor is very abrasive to everyone he meets. This man is not here to play games or make friends, and he's also that way with his dad. But there's also this clear attachment he has to his dad, to the point where he even gets into a fight with Achilles about it. Connor very clearly thinks he can turn his dad to his side, and he wants that to happen. He wants to have a good relationship with his dad, but it just doesn't end up working out that way, because their entire personalities and worldviews just clash. Like I said, Connor is pretty rough around the edges, but he is a good person. He goes out of his way to help people who need it and doesn't kill people unless he actually has to. In theory anyway, let's ignore the hundreds of redcoats you kill in the open world. But Hatham is the opposite. He's super charismatic, well-dressed, easy to get along with, but people's lives are nothing to him unless they can contribute to his mission in some way. We only really find this out about him when Connor meets him, which might seem like another character change, but it kinda isn't. Hatham's sections were very focused. He does end up freeing some natives who are about to be enslaved, but he only does that to win their trust to learn where the precursor ruin is. He doesn't actually care about these people. This happens off-screen, but Connor's mom realized that. It actually happens entirely in the mission description, where it says that she fell in love with Hatham until she realized who he actually was, which is definitely not who the prologue makes you think he is. The big move that Hatham pulls that Connor can't stand is killing people after interrogating them. In one instance, Connor even gives a guy his word that he'll be alright if he talks, only for Hatham to then stab him in the back. To Hatham, this is obvious. If they let him live, he'll warn whoever they're going after that they're coming. Obviously, you should kill him. But that's not the kind of person Connor is. You can tell that Hatham also does want to have a relationship with Connor to some level. But to him, the mission always comes first, and when Connor gets in the way of that mission, he's completely willing to kill his own son. Honestly, I think this moment right here is when Connor loses a lot of that naivety, because it's after this he just decides to go kill Charles Lee on his own, no matter what Washington or the other Patriots say. Speaking of Charles Lee, he's just kind of a menace throughout the entire game. Of course, there was the opening scene for Connor, then another where we see that he incited the Boston Massacre. He also tries to sabotage George Washington at every turn so that he could be elected as the leader of the Continental Army. Of course, it was also him behind Connor getting arrested and nearly killed, and when Washington was sending his troops after Connor's tribe, guess who showed up to encourage them to attack the Patriots and make things even worse? Apparently Charles Lee was so convincing that he managed to convince Connor's bitch-ass friend that Connor is actually a traitor and you end up having to kill him. Charles Lee is like Connor's reverse Flash, but instead of jerking him off at light speed, he's just determined to make this man's life as miserable as possible. Again, he's a completely different character between the prologue and the actual game, but I think he's a decent villain. He definitely should not have been the ultimate villain. I think Hatham should have been that. But to be fair, by the time you go after Charles Lee in full, he's completely dishonored, which actually happened in real life too. There's this really head-scratching scene at the end where Charles Lee is giving a speech at Hatham's funeral and Connor just kinda stumbles in, still dazed from being blown up by the cannons of his own ship, and he kinda just lets Charles Lee capture him. Then Charles is like, no, we can't kill him yet, we need to make him watch as we destroy his entire world. Like this super villain-ass monologue, which of course bites him in the ass when Connor escapes. Very tropey, kinda lame. I do like that you don't actually fight Charles Lee though. I think it's fun to have this guy who's kind of haunted you throughout the entire game die after running for his life at the mere sight of you. I don't know how to feel about Charles Lee in this game in general because he's kind of two different characters. Prologue Charles could have been a very interesting twist villain, but there's really no twist. Like 18 years or whatever pass and he just becomes evil in that time. The conclusion to Connor's story has him finally get the Templar amulet and bury it in his own grave, right next to Achilles, now basically free to do whatever he wants in the world that he helped create. The epilogue actually does drive home the idea that Connor might have made a mistake in supporting the Patriots so hard, which I do appreciate, but I think Connor himself should have realized that at some point in the 27 betrayals that happened to him along the way. But anyway, what is Desmond up to during all of this? Well, you get 3 missions as him in the modern day. The first is just platforming up a skyscraper that's currently under construction. It's a cool mission visually, but definitely the worst of the 3. You meet Desmond's main rival here, a former assassin called Daniel Cross. He's honestly not interesting, but he does have this fun line about how Desmond is running around in 2012 or whatever with knives instead of a gun.
Let's not draw this out. You got nowhere to go, and I've got a gun. Speaking of which, it's the 21st century and you're still running around with only a tiny knife for protection? It's stupid.
Desmond's second mission has him sneaking into this arena. By the way, what Desmond is doing is finding these precursor batteries that should open the temple that you're in. Actually, I just realized I haven't explained anything of what's going on with Desmond. So I already talked about the solar flare, but when Desi arrives in the precursor temple, he meets an AI of one of the precursors named Juno, which they're all named after Roman gods. She's like, go find these batteries for me, bro, then the temple will open up and I'll shield the earth from the solar flare. So while Desmond experiences Connor's life to find out where the key to the temple is, his team finds the batteries in the real world. Anyway, the second mission is cool because you get to do some Desmond combat, which is the same as Connor combat, except you don't get the indicators for when you need a counter. It's kind of cool. Desmond's third mission is the coolest because you get to walk right into Abstergo headquarters, kill a bunch of people, kill Daniel Cross and steal his gun, and then just shoot your way through the entire building. It's sick as fuck. At the end you use the Apple of Eden, which is from AC2, to mind control the guards into killing themselves. By the way, these are salary employees of a giant corporation, so definitely not the most ethical thing to do, but fuck it, the world is at stake. Once you have all 3 batteries and fully relive Connor's memories, the crew goes and digs up the amulet to get into the temple and you're ready for the ending. An ending that is not very good, at all. Right at the finish line, Minerva, who was the precursor AI from AC2, shows up and is like, actually, Juno is evil and if you open the temple, she will save the world but then go on to enslave everyone, and Desmond will die. So Desmond's like, okay, what's your solution then to stop the end of the world? And Minerva's like, oh, you wouldn't get it. So Juno explains that indeed the world will end, but you'll survive and can lead the survivors into a brand new age. An age that literally starts out at basically the Stone Age and ends with you becoming revered as a god, and a holy order founded that burns anyone that disagrees with Desmond's teachings. So this is the point when most games would let you choose. Do you want to let Juno out anyway and save the world, or let the world end and go with the whole Saint Desmond storyline? Except you don't actually get to choose. Desmond chooses the obvious option of saving the world and dealing with Juno later. So Desmond dies and the world is saved, with the vague promise of future games where you'll have to deal with the evil goddess that you just unleashed on the world. Of course, that never ended up happening because they dropped the modern day storyline from the games after this, which, to be clear, was the right decision, I think. It's just kind of like, huh, so that was the ending to the trilogy. The main character dies while unleashing an evil godlike AI upon the world. Definitely not the ending I think people would have wanted, but also most people didn't like Desmond in the storyline anyway, so whatever. I do think it's interesting that there's no final boss fight or anything though. Like, Connor doesn't get one. I mean, he kinda does with Hatham. It is a really unique fight where you have to lead him to objects that you can throw at him. But then you still have like 30 minutes of content as him after that. Likewise, I think Desmond could have benefited from a final boss fight here too. Like, maybe instead of having Daniel Cross die in the third mission, he would come right back at the end and Desmond has to fight him in the temple. That still wouldn't have been great because who gives a fuck about Daniel Cross, but I think it would have been better than what we got. As for the choice thing, Assassin's Creed is not a choice and consequence game, it's just a story game, so that's really not a mark against it. I just think it's odd that they kind of make you think that you will get to choose, then don't let you. To wrap up with the story, I think it's a super mixed bag and easily worse than AC2. Like I said, I haven't played the first one. Now there are some moments of greatness, like the opening as Hatham, then later the time you spend as Connor working with him, but then there's just a lot of boring and kind of stupid stuff. The battles are really sick, and as an American, there's a lot of moments where you're like, no fucking way, I get to go with Paul Revere as he yells, the British are coming! Except he doesn't actually say that in the mission, but whatever. But anyway, just like any Assassin's Creed game, you really play it to be immersed in the setting. I think this one does a really good job of that. The cities feel populated yet rough around the edges, like you'd expect these really young cities of early America to be. You also get to escape into the city, into the mountains, which are now beautiful and filled with life, which seems crazy today, like Damage got attacked by 10 bears in a row, but it really wasn't that crazy back then. It's a good game, man. I think the biggest thing holding it back though are just some of the writing decisions. I think Connor could have been a much better protagonist if he just wasn't so inconsistent. Like, Connor is in general kind of a belligerent. He doesn't take shit from anybody, not even his trainer Achilles. That is until it's one of the Patriot leaders talking to him, at which point Connor will do anything they ask him to do. All in all though, I honestly can't say I rediscovered anything about this game during my replay. I think my childhood impressions of it were right. The setting is cool, combat is fun, but the story is really nothing to write home about. Thank you all so much for watching.